Hey, what's up, everybody? Michael Fabiano here for Sports Illustrated Fantasy with my Fabs 5 trends from week 5. And we're going to start off at number 5 with Allen Robinson. You know, he's been one of the biggest busts in fantasy football through 5 weeks, and it doesn't really seem like there's any end in sight. The Bears have run the ball 56% of the time with Justin Fields under center, and Fields hasn't thrown the ball more than 20 times in a game this season. That's bad news for Allen Robinson. He's a tough play right now, even when the matchup is right. So if you have Robinson on your fantasy roster, you may want to sit him at least until he starts to get hot. At number 4, speaking of the Bears, let's talk about that backfield situation. It looks like a committee in the Windy City. We all thought it was going to be Damian Williams who takes over for David Montgomery, but he split the workload with KHALIL Herbert. And while Williams scored the most fantasy points, Herbert played more snaps and had more touches in the game. Williams is probably already off the waiver wire, but Herbert is not owned in any fantasy football leagues out there. Go out and pick him up now. Next up at number 3 is the Niners backfield, and the return of Elijah Mitchell. That really meant the end of Trey Sermon's fantasy value, at least for last week. Mitchell led the Niners backfield in snaps and touches, while Sermon played 2 snaps and had 1 touch. Now remember, Sermon was a healthy scratch in week 1, which meant he was no better than 4th on the depth chart among running backs in San Francisco. And while the Niners have a bye this week, I wouldn't cut Trey Sermon, but Elijah Mitchell is the Niners back to own from a fantasy perspective. At number 2, the Giants offense is a mash unit right now, folks. Daniel Jones got hurt last week. So did Saquon Barkley. Kenny Galladay is going to be out for at least a week or 2, and they already have been missing Darius Slayton and Sterling Shepard. So rookie KADARIUS Toney went absolutely bananas against the Dallas Cowboys. 13 targets, 189 yards. He is dealing with an ankle injury right now, but this is a kid who is very explosive, and he's out there on the waiver wire in many leagues. If he is, go out and get him moving forward. And at number 1, let's talk about the backfield in Tampa Bay with Lombardi Lenny. That's right, Leonard Fournette. He is now the top guy for Bruce Arians. He's led the team in snaps, touches, and fantasy points over the last 2 weeks. And the team has really faded Ronald Jones out of the rotation. Fournette's also been very good in terms of being able to play well when the matchup is favorable, much like he did last week against the Miami Dolphins. So keep in mind, Leonard Fournette is a former top 10 fantasy running back, and now he is back in the RB2 mix from a fantasy football perspective. And those are my top 5 Fabs 5 trends from week 5. Hey, folks, for all of the best fantasy football information, make sure you check out si.com/fantasy.